Hey again everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another installment in our new figure showcase series. And for those just joining for the first time, this is a series of videos where we just look at a figure I'm lucky enough to have gotten and then I'm adding into the collection. And more often than not, they are newer releases. So for today's installment, we're going in a slightly different direction and revisiting military figures of a sort, but also movie figures. And we're going to be taking a look at the VTS Toys Naval Test Pilot Hypersonic Jet Mission figure. And as you look at the figure, it's basically Maverick from the opening scene to Top Gun Maverick as he flies the Darkstar on that test mission. So very cool to have an opportunity to own this. It's just like DID Corps and some other military companies that are able to give us some of these movie figures, but label them under a military label, or even this one here called an artistic interpretation. So obviously, I hope most of us have watched the movie by now, but besides Maverick in the full F-18 flight suit, this is probably the most recognizable look from the movie, other than obviously the leather jacket. And we'll get into more detail with the suit, but it's actually pretty impressive looking. But before jumping into the figure, let's take a look at what we're getting here from VTS. So it's actually a pretty decent set. You get 2 additional hands and what looks like a bit of equipment, but it's a little deceiving because it's all really part of the helmet assembly and the ventilating unit that he's carrying. You do also get a nice display base that is meant to resemble a runway, and then some miscellaneous items like the patches that have to get connected to the flight suit, a clipboard with some flight information, as well as some applesauce pouches. So I think it's a decent set, although this is not a figure that you're going to anticipate being in the high accessory department. And again, some of the elements like the food, you're not really necessarily going to use. And I don't really know what else they could have given us for this one. So let's jump into the accessories as we normally do, and we'll get started with the 2 spare hands. And that's all we get. They're preset in a way that they can grip some of the items like those pouches. Nothing crazy here. Good, solid, simple mold that works with the figure. But the figure comes with the preset gloved hands that just look good with the suit overall. So it's nice to have these extras, but not sure that I'm going to personally get much use out of them. Next up is actually probably one of the most impressive pieces. Although I do have an issue with mine that will require some glue or some tack. But we're looking at the ventilation box that Maverick carries with him as he's getting into the Darkstar. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that this is meant to cool down the pilot. So it comes with 2 connections, one for a hose that goes into the helmet, and the other, the long hose in the back that connects to the unit and then connects into a plug on the front of the suit. Box itself is a matte black with some striking details like the silver bolts and some text that is legible, although the camera is having a hard time picking it up, and some mesh panels on the front, back, and side. So really incredibly done. The top includes the connector points for both hoses, one in a nice metallic blue and the other one held by a small string. And you'll see it in the review, but this is where I'm having issues with the hose connection. It just won't stay on. But really a great design, especially for something that is just a box. Even the silver details on the side showing the latches and some gauges, just very impressive. Next up, you get the clipboard that does include some sheets of paper with some information on them. Very simple, but look, nice addition to the suit, right? And it creates the feeling of a pilot with their checklist. And yet then you get the nice black and gray patches that you have to put on the suit yourself, including a really well done American flag, and then the 2 test pilot patches for the Darkstar program, as well as the test pilot program in general. Next, you get the tubes and stickers that would basically identify those 2 silver toothpaste looking elements as applesauce, with a long stick that I have to imagine would allow him to eat these while wearing the helmet. They're very straightforward silver pouches with a nice blue cap, and you get the water bottle as well with the extended spout. They're great, but I don't know where they go on the suit. I'd imagine they have to get stored somewhere, but I haven't been able to figure that out, so we'll have to see, or if someone figured it out, let me know. Next up, you get another incredible piece, and that's the helmet. So it comes preset with the yellow hoses, which attach to the connector that goes into the ventilation box. You also have a communications connector for the comm gear. Helmet does have a few styles of wear, with the yellow visor being separate from the primary, so you can flip the entire visor assembly up or just the yellow visor up. And then there is a cool latch at the bottom that makes this feel like an astronaut helmet. Top on the forehead has a US Navy flight insignia, and if there was any doubt at all, the back of the helmet has Maverick's call sign, completely set in a nice black finish. And you can also see those hose connections and the great detail throughout here. Final accessory is the base, and I did want to show this just because it's kind of nice with the section of runway and the yellow taxi lines. They resisted labeling the figure as Maverick though, but it's a very simple yet elegant piece, so the figure, I will say, doesn't need it, but if you do want to use it, I think it serves a bit of a diorama. And as an added bonus, you get 2 full-size patches. We saw the 6-scale versions of these, but VTS is giving you some full-size ones that you can affix to a backpack or something else. Fully embroidered, and kind of let you see the details of the smaller ones. It is not an essential accessory by far, so not going to go into my overall feelings regarding the figure, but always nice to have some extras. Alright, so now let's get to the figure and we'll start with the sculpt. And look, let's start with the description on the box, which some of you might think is a bit of a cop-out, but they are calling this an artistic representation. So don't go in expecting the best sculpt in the world. With that in mind, I think it is a decent sculpt. I think you can tell who it's supposed to be in the context of the flight suit in particular. And we've gotten a lot of third-party Maverick sculpts recently. I do think the DID Core one that we previously reviewed is the best of the recent releases, and I would say this is my second favorite. It has some great paint work, although the hair is a little soft, but not sure that can be helped, since it's just short hair. But there's a decent shading along the facial features and wrinkles that gives the figure a little sense of realism. Eyes are done well, not as good as Hot Toys, but really decent, so overall, while not perfect, I think it's a very solid effort. And if you are intending on displaying him with the helmet on, that is going to obscure some of the imperfections. Now let's look at the rest of the figure, and this is really where things shine. At first sight, it's just a black jumpsuit, but it looks really good. First of all, the material choice is a nice nylon-like fabric that gives it a very real look, and while it's all black, there are sections of gray for Velcro attachments. Obviously, you get the patches on the arms that just look awesome, and then you have a pretty nice bit of stitch work throughout, running down the sleeves and the torso, where you have attachment points for the hoses and the like, as well as a couple of hanging clips at the front that probably serve to connect them to the pilot seat. Pants have some nice pockets or leg pouches that are built in, but the zippers aren't functional, just as an FYI. Gloves are awesome, fully molded with a nice oversized look to them, black on the exterior and a gray lining on the palms and interior face of the fingers. Great detail too, and they actually clip into the sleeve cuffs of the suit, so very reminiscent again of an astronaut uniform, as it should be for a high altitude aircraft. The clips too have some nice paint app and detail work with some gold to them. Boots are another highlight. So the DID Core ones were actual leather boots that looked good. That's a big highlight of that company. Only issue I had with those is that at this scale, it's hard to get the material thin enough to look realistic. So some of the parts of those boots look a little iffy, like a little oversized. So here VTS went with the molded ones that look great. They run the risk of being a tad too plasticky, but that's mediated by the additional piece that's connected to the boot with straps and this gray heel cover, which I'm guessing locks into the pilot seat in some manner. So very nice overall. And finally, you see the collar detail, which like the arms include the circular lock that the helmet can actually clip onto. So maybe I'm easily impressed, but I do think that's pretty incredible. So look, I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. Again, not your traditional Maverick. I think a lot of people gravitate towards the F-14 jumpsuit or even the flight suit from the final bombing mission in this movie, or more importantly, the leather bomber jacket. But if you do have a military collection, this doubles as a test pilot. And if you did like the movie like I did, you get a chance to own a different version of Maverick. There are a few issues with the figure, even though more positive than not, but like I mentioned at the start, one of the hoses that connects to the front of the flight suit and then to the ventilation box isn't staying in place. I checked the plug on the cable and it looks like it wasn't made deep enough, so again, might need some glue dots or some adhesive to make it stick, but a little annoying. The other thing that I wasn't expecting, it's kind of hard for the figure to hold the ventilation box. Box is great with all the detail we discussed, as well as a functional handle, but it's almost too small to use with the gloved hands, and you run the risk of breaking it, so be gentle with this. And because of how you have to wedge in the hand, it does take some work to get it posed in a way that isn't overly awkward. But even with those issues, this is an impressive looking figure that feels unique, especially with that helmet. The multiple options with the visor are great, and even the sculpt being fairly solid gives you tons of display options. So I'm happy with it as an addition to the movie shelf that I'm hoping to have set up. And if you just want another military pilot, looks pretty incredible overall. So that was a quick look at the VTS Toys Naval Test Pilot, or Maverick, from the opening scenes of Top Gun Maverick. Another great addition to the collection and a very solid figure, especially when you consider the price point. And for me, having the DID Core Maverick, it's a great companion piece. So as always, thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying the content, please consider dropping a like, comment, or subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next video.